translates into English as? Well, it's not, even our own people. We don't even growing up knowing what Sioux means. And it was the French fur traders that long ago, they came from Canada, United States, trading the hides, the furs, and they heard about our ancestors, our people, because we were famous for hunting the bison. We'd take the bison, utilize every part of the bison, and so the French fur traders, they came across the Chippewa tribe, and they said, who is that tribe that lives by the Missouri River? And so back then they had interpreters because the Chippewa did not understand French. So they had interpreters kind of helping them. So eventually the French fur traders settled on this term, Nadawi Sioux. They cut it in half and they just start calling us Sioux. And so United States government eventually entered into treaty agreements with 567 tribes across our nation. And so when they come into these treaty agreements, they gave every tribe their own name, officially. And so they heard the French fur traders calling us Sioux. So United States government officially named us under the Department of Interior, the Great Sioux Nation, which in English translates into the Great Snakes, Enemies, Adders Nation. Because they didn't understand. Because the Chippewa didn't know what they were asking them. The interpreters were trying to help them. So instead of the river, they thought they were asking them about snakes. So that's where they came up with that term. But we prefer to call ourselves Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, the three dialects of our people. Now the only difference is if you're Lakota, to say friend, you say Kola. Can everybody say Kola?
Kola.
I think Coca-Cola stole that from us. But you're speaking to a Lakota, if they say Kola. If they're Dakota, they'll replace the L with a D and say Koda. If they're Nakota, they'll replace the LD with the N and say Kona. And we always like to tease each other. If our Lakota relatives, they come to the city for the first time, they go through drive-through, and so when they go through drive-through, instead of, they'll say McDonald's. And Dakota will say, I'm dubbing it. But see, we like to tease each other. Al, D, and humor is one of the great medicines that we have as peoples. No matter what race you are, if you're around people that you love and appreciate, you share that medicine, that laughter. And it's good. I have one of my Tahashis here from the Crow Creek Sioux tribe right back here, Mr. J.R. Redwater. He's a comedian, well-known comedian living in Los Angeles. And he's been at a House of Comedy. He's been all throughout. He's also, I think, Showtime, was it? You guys did a show. So let's give my Tahashi a round of applause back here. He's a comedian. And so these are the ways of our people, some of the histories that you will not learn in a K through 12 public education. You don't really learn the history of our people in this manner. So we have times like this where we can share our perspective. And someday that may change. Well, the reason why the French fur traders were so interested in our people is because we hunted the bison. And there were so many bison some long time ago that when some of the first settlers came this direction, they documented that when they came across the first big buffalo herds, they had to stop and wait 8 days for one bison herd to pass. And 80,000 bison in one herd. 30 to 60 million at one time. And when our people hunted the bison, we got food, clothing, and shelter all from the bison. That's why we like Walmart today, because it's historically in us to get everything on one place, one shot. But nonetheless, we use every part of the bison. You take the hide, you scrape it, and you take the brain of the bison, you rub it into the hide. That's the traditional method of tanning the hide. They call it buckskin. And then you take the hump area, the tendons, you sew it together. 15 hides to make one teepee. So there's a lot of work that went into this. Well, as we go forward here, this is the Black Hills. We have 7 sacred sites all throughout the Black Hills. North of us, there's a place called Black Elk Peak. This is the highest point in the region. And to this day, during the spring solstice, our people, our traditional relatives, they would hike up Black Elk Peak and they would welcome back the rain, Wakia Oyate, and thank Creator for sending and replenishing Grandmother Earth. This is one of the traditions to our people. We have Mato Tipila, Mato Paha, Devil's Tower, you might know it as Bear Butte. The creation story right down here, Wind Cave, right by Hot Springs. And so all these sites, a beautiful place, but in the 1800s, ladies and gentlemen, we heard of our relatives to the east, they started to lose their land. As the settlers came this way, Oregon Trail, Lewis and Clark Expedition, all of these things changing the way of life for our people. And so this led here, our people traveled in 1851 to Fort Laramie, Wyoming, negotiating the 1851 Fort Laramie Treaty, which essentially preserved the northern plains, east bank of the Missouri River over to the Bighorn Mountains, North Platte River down in Nebraska up to the Cannonball River. This was preserved for our people. And then in 1868, the Fort Laramie Treaty was reduced, just half of South Dakota, until the arrival, 4 years later, 1872, the arrival of General George Armstrong Custer. Custer found gold in the Black Hills. The gold rush began, you could not keep the people out. So this led to the Black Hills Act, which essentially offered money to buy the Black Hills from our ancestors. But our ancestors said, we cannot sell this beautiful land. So to this day, we've never taken that money, we've never signed the agreement to sell the Black Hills. So this led to the Sell or Starve Act. You sell the Black Hills, or you will no longer get food, because in the late 1800s, we could no longer hunt anymore, because there was less than 1,000 buffalo left. And so the Sell or Starve Act came about, so Tashuke Witko, Sinibo, Ikpa Duta, the leaders of our people, they came together with the Northern Cheyenne Arapaho, and they met June 25th, 1876, the Battle of Little Bighorn, and they met Custer, and they defeated Custer that day, saving our people. And so, yes, let's give Crazy Horse a round of applause for his service, being able to help our people. And then, ladies and gentlemen, in the early 1900s, 25% of all indigenous peoples that were left volunteered for World War I, using our languages to develop codes that saved the lives of many U.S. soldiers and our allies. The most famous were the Navajo Code Talkers, but we had code talkers from over 30 tribes, including our people, Lakota, Dakota, Ocheti, Shakowee. Let's give them a round of applause for their service, ladies and gentlemen. You know, around this time, we first moved to the reservations, we had to adapt to a new way of life, and during this time is where a lot of our current songs and dances derive from. And so one of the first dances we're going to share with you here is the Fancy Feather Dance. Very athletic, a lot of energy, tells the stories of our dancers. And so ladies and gentlemen, let's give nephew Carlos Benali a warm welcome as he gets ready to share the Fancy Feather Dance. And I'm going to ask nephew to introduce his style of dance with you, then we're going to go into a couple of fast and furious songs.
Hello, my name is Carlos Benali. I am half Dakota and half Dene Navajo. I'm 19 years old. I'm dancing Men's Fancy Feather. And Men's Fancy Feather originated in the late 1800s during the Wild Bill Show. How many of you guys have heard about the Wild Bill Show? Yeah? Well, Fancy Dance came to be because they wanted something more entertaining, more, athletic, more exciting like that, and thus became Men's Fancy Feather. Now today, Men's Fancy Feather is more of a freestyle dance, and they incorporate different styles like breakdancing, hip-hop, anything like that, jazz. I'll tell you a story about my friend that I met. I didn't know him back then, but me and him had a dance-off. And when me and him was dancing off, I looked at the corner to my left, and I seen that he was doing the worm down right beside me. And I was like, oh, look at this! And eventually we started talking, and I asked him if he could teach me it. and so now I know how to do worm. And so, but yeah, how we got our style was by looking at the horse, because we seen how the horse was act energetic, wild, you know, how it would be bucking, spin one way, spin the other way, kick up the legs. So that's how we got our style of men's fancy feather dancing. And so I just want to thank you all for coming out here, and hopefully you're enjoying your time, you know, staying safe, and you know, thank you. I hope.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Song number 1, Fancy Feather Dancing. If you're ready to go, make some noise. All right, Carlos Benali, fastest pair of moccasins this side of the Bighorn Mountains. You know, we're gonna go into song number 2, which is a crow hop or foot slide, a little more graceful style of dance. But we're gonna share this song with you next, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, if you appreciated song number 1, let's give Carlos a big round of applause. All right. We're going to let Carlos change. He's going to share a hoop dance with you next. And so as he's changing, all you married ladies, don't be watching now. All right, so he's going to change and we're going to do the hoop dance for next. But while he was doing that, while he's changing, you know, our people, when we first moved to the reservation, it was a very difficult transition for our people. And, you know, we had to learn English. A lot of our people went to boarding schools. It was a challenging transition for our people. But there was a lot of churches that came to the reservation. A lot of missionaries. They wanted to help translate the Bible into our language. So early on, they asked Grandpa to come to church to learn English, to translate the Bible. So Grandpa, he's one of the first ones to go to church. And after a while, a couple months go by, we're wondering in our language, we said, Grandpa, Uganda, do you understand English now? And Grandpa said, hey, no. So we said, well, why do you go to church all the time if you don't know what they're talking about over there? And Grandpa said in our language, he said, I go to church all the time because they're serving me a lot of good food. He said, they're always talking about this man. The whole world knows him. He's famous. They call him the Pope. Someday I want to meet him. We said, Grandpa, you know what? The Pope, he's going to be in Denver, Colorado. We can take you. So Grandpa said, pack up the teepee, let's go. So we went down to Denver, Colorado that time. A lot of people were over there. It was packed. We barely had any room, but luckily we found a spot to set up the teepee right beside the road. We set up the teepee, and there's more and more people were coming. It was so packed we could not believe it. We never saw so many people in our lives. Next thing you know it, there was a buzz that came over the crowd. Everybody was excited. We looked up, and the Pope Mobile was coming down the road, and the Pope was waving to the people. Next thing you know it, the Pope Mobile was getting closer and closer. And he pulled up right in front of the teepee. The Pope Mobile stopped. And the Pope, he stood up and he's staring at Grandpa, looking at the teepee. Everybody was watching. So Grandpa, he stood up, he looked right back at the Pope. Next thing you know it, after a little while, the Pope went like this to Grandpa. Everybody was quiet. So after a little bit in our language, Grandpa turned around, he looked at us, and he said, I'm ready to go home now. So we packed up and went home. When we got home, Grandma, she came running outside. She was so excited. She came over there, gave Grandpa a big hug. Honey, how was your trip? How was your trip? How was it down? Did you meet the Pope? We were kind of listening in, and we could hear Grandpa saying in our language, this is what he was telling her. I went all the way to Denver, Colorado. A whole bunch of people there. We could not believe it. We went there, so many people were watching. Everybody's come. Next thing you know it, the Pope Mobile drove right down the road. He pulled up in front of me, and the Pope stood up, and he looked at me right in the eyes, and he told me, take down your teepee and get out of here. And Grandma, she chewed him out, and she said, hey, that means he's giving you a blessing. But see, we don't understand one another. Throughout history, we don't really understand a lot of the historical K through 12. We don't learn anything about indigenous people. You know, Disney taught us about Pocahontas, and that's about it. There's not a whole lot. You have one paragraph. And so one of the things that what happened when westward expansion took place in our country, the settlers were told that indigenous peoples were evil, that they were wrong. So manifest destiny happened. And so today, 1978, that is when the American Indian Religious Freedoms Act was passed. So our grandparents, Tashuke Witko, the many others, they lived this life. They knew that we weren't wrong the way we lived, because Creator made all of us. Every single person, we all have our own way of communicating with that one God. We all have our belief systems. And so, with that, we're going to bring Nephew back out here to share with you the hoop dance. And this dance derives kind of from that place, the Wichachbi Oyate, the Star Nation. Our ancestors would study the formation of the stars. A lot of knowledge that comes from that. This is a beautiful dance that Nephew's going to share with you. So, ladies and gentlemen, hang on to your hats. This is a beautiful style that we're going to go here. And during the dance here, you know, Nephew's only been dancing for about 1 month, this hoop dance. He's pretty new. And but he's been dancing since he was a little boy, the fancy feather. And so throughout this dance, if you like what you see, if you see certain formations of the dance, give him a round of applause and thank him for his dance. And so here we go, ladies and gentlemen, hoop dance. Valley. Here we go. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen. You know, what we're going to do next, we're going to ask you to help out Carlos here. Ladies and gentlemen, with your friends and your family. You know, back home on our reservations, when we have guests come to our annual celebrations, a lot of times we'll give a friendship dance, a social dance, and we'll share it with them, and that's what Carlos is going to share with you. So with your friends and your family, come together and join everybody. Make one big circle around the outside of the bleachers. Stand side by side with your family and your friends on the outside of the bleachers, one circle, everybody work together in the front here, all the way around. We need it to connect. We'd like the circle to connect all the way around the outside of the room. First thing I want you to do, ladies and gentlemen, is look to the person on your left side and give them a social distance high five.
High five.
Now look to the person on your right side and blow them a social distance kiss.
Oh.
Hey, make sure you're not standing beside your mother-in-law, fellas. All right, here's what we're going to do. Work together. Everybody's going to step to the left. This is called the round dance. It's very simple. Everybody, and nephew is going to show you the steps. So step to the left. Step, 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 step. There you go. Let loose. A round dance, social dance, kind of a friendship dance for you all. Wait. Hey, out. In our language, we have a term that we say, Mitakuye Oyase. And that means all my relatives. Means we are all related. That Creator made each and every one of us. And so, with this, in the spirit of that, long ago, there was an elder. There was a spiritual advisor amongst our people said the sacred hoop of life is broken after what happened long ago. But they prophesied that someday people are going to start gathering here in the heart of everything that is the Black Hills. People of all races, all colors, all backgrounds will join together with one mind and one heart in the spirit of Mitakuye Oyasku. And we look at our children, we say, Wakanja, because they come from that place, fresh, from where Creator sent them to us. And if you see our children, they play together. They don't see differences. They don't see color. They don't see economic challenges. They just play with one another. And so we have to understand these teachings. And so we ask that you take these teachings, that Mitakuye Oyase, take it home with your family, your friends, your community. And as that healing, the sacred hoop of life will heal once again. And Creator will teach each and every one of us how we should be in that way. And so on behalf of nephew Carlos and myself, we want to say thank you for taking time to visit us here in the beautiful Black Hills. Means I'll see you again, I'll see you later. Enjoy the rest of your visit here in the beautiful Black Hills. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us.